The monitoring station on Galactic Council Outpost 7 had been quiet for 3 standard cycles. Communications Officer Velth enjoyed the peaceful routine of scanning empty space for signals that never came. The galaxy was at peace and had been for nearly 200 years. Wars were a thing of the past, solved by diplomacy and trade agreements. That changed when the emergency beacon started screaming. Velth's 4 arms moved quickly across the control panel as red warnings flashed across every screen. The signal was coming from the Kepler system, home to the peaceful Zephyrian colonies. But this was not a normal communication. The transmission was broken, filled with static, and carried the highest priority emergency code. "Help us," came a voice through the noise. The words were in Zephyrian, but the universal translator made them clear to Velth. They came without warning. "The sky burns. Our cities are gone. Total annihilation. They call themselves the Vorthan Hegemony. Please, anyone who can hear this, help us before they—" The signal died. Velth stared at the silent communication panel for several seconds. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful scholars and artists. Their 12 million people had never harmed anyone. They had no enemies and no weapons beyond simple tools for mining and construction. The communications officer's hands shook as he opened a priority channel to the Galactic Council headquarters. Within minutes, Admiral Thys appeared on the holographic display. Her blue skin had turned pale with worry. "You are certain about this transmission?" she asked. "Yes, Admiral." The signal came directly from Kepler 442b. It lasted 47 seconds before cutting off completely. Admiral Thys closed her large black eyes. "Send our fastest ships to investigate. I want a full reconnaissance team there within 6 hours." The Council's response fleet consisted of 3 diplomatic vessels and 2 light escort ships. They were built for peaceful missions, not combat. The galaxy had not seen real war in so long that most species had forgotten how to build proper warships. When the ships arrived at the Kepler system, what they found made experienced space travelers sick with horror. Kepler 442b was a dead world. The blue oceans that once reflected beautiful twin moons were now black with ash and debris. The continents showed massive crater scars where cities once stood. The orbital stations that had welcomed peaceful traders for centuries were twisted wreckage floating in space. Captain Moores of the investigation. Team sent his report back to Admiral. This with hands that would not stop shaking. "Admiral, we detect no life signs on the planet's surface. The population centers have been completely destroyed by orbital bombardment. This was not a military engagement. This was extermination." The worst news came from the long-range sensors. Massive energy signatures were moving away from the system toward the next inhabited worlds. The signatures matched the descriptions in the oldest military databases, the ones that described the Vorthan hegemony. The Vorthan hegemony had been quiet for over 300 years. Most species thought they were extinct or had turned peaceful like everyone else. But the sensor readings told a different story. A fleet of over 200 massive warships was moving through space, heading directly toward the Altarian system where 4 billion innocent people lived their quiet lives. Admiral Thys gathered the emergency council session within hours of receiving the report. Representatives from dozens of species filled the great chamber, their faces showing fear that had not been seen in generations. "The situation is clear," Admiral Thys announced to the assembled delegates. "The Vorthan hegemony has returned to active conquest. They have completely destroyed the Zephyrian colonies and are moving toward Altair Prime. Our intelligence estimates they will reach the system in less than 10 standard days." The chamber erupted in panicked discussions. Some delegates suggested immediate evacuation of the Altarian system. Others called for diplomatic contact with the Vorthan fleet. A few suggested gathering the combined peaceful fleets of all council members for a defensive action. "Our combined fleet strength is 68 vessels," announced Defense Coordinator Krell. His voice was grim. "They are equipped for peacekeeping and exploration, not warfare. Intelligence estimates the Vorthan fleet at over 200 heavy combat vessels designed specifically for planetary destruction." The mathematics were simple and terrifying. The peaceful fleets of the galaxy could not stop the Vorthan advance. 4 billion Altarians would die, followed by countless others as the hegemony continued their conquest. "There is one option," Admiral Thys said quietly. The chamber fell silent. "We could send the distress signal to the quarantine system." The silence that followed lasted for nearly a full minute. Every delegate knew which system she meant. Sol 3, Earth, the blue world whose inhabitants had been classified as dangerous and banned from contact with galactic civilization. The humans had made contact with galactic civilization 200 years ago. Their first diplomatic mission had gone well until the cultural exchange began. When the galaxy learned about human history, about the wars they had fought against their own species, about the weapons they had created, about the ways they had learned to kill, the Galactic Council had made a unanimous decision. Humanity was quarantined. They were classified as extreme death world entities and banned from leaving their solar system. It was not punishment but protection. The galaxy had learned peace. Humans were still learning how not to be the most dangerous predators in known space. The protocols are clear, said Delegate Heron from the legal committee. Contact with the Sol system is forbidden under Galactic Protection Act 2847. The risk to galactic civilization is too great. The risk of extinction is greater, Admiral Thiss replied. We are facing the destruction of multiple peaceful civilizations. Our own fleets cannot stop the Vorthan advance. We need help from someone who understands warfare. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates argued that releasing the humans might create an even worse threat than the Vorthan hegemony. Others pointed out that 4 billion Altarians would die if they did nothing. Finally, Admiral Thiss called for an emergency vote. The measure passed by a single vote. Authorization to transmit the Zephyrian distress signal to the Sol system. The transmission array on Galactic Station Prime was the most powerful communication system in known space. It had never been used to contact the quarantined human system. As the technicians prepared the signal, many of them wondered if they were making a terrible mistake. The modified distress call was simple. It contained the original Zephyrian message, complete sensor data from the destroyed colony, projected path of the Vorthan fleet, and estimated arrival time at Altair Prime. The message was broadcast, using human mathematical constants to ensure they would recognize it as intended for them. Admiral Thiss watched the signal disappear into space, traveling toward the small yellow star that warmed the most dangerous world in the galaxy. She wondered if the humans would even respond. They had been isolated for 2 centuries. Perhaps they had forgotten how to fight. Perhaps they had learned peace like everyone else. Or perhaps they had spent 200 years becoming something even more dangerous than the galaxy remembered. The signal reached Earth's outer monitoring stations 18 hours later. For the first time in 2 centuries, an alien distress call was being received by human ears. What happened next would determine the fate of billions of innocent lives across the galaxy. In the depths of space, the Vorthan fleet continued its advance toward Altair Prime, confident that nothing in the peaceful galaxy could stop their return to conquest. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Sarah Chen was reviewing botanical research reports when the priority alert sounded through Luna Base. In 53 years of service, she had never heard that particular alarm. It was reserved for first contact situations or threats to human survival. Since humanity had been quarantined from galactic civilization for 2 centuries, neither seemed likely. She moved quickly to the communications center where Lieutenant Morrison was staring at his screens with wide eyes. The young officer had never seen an actual alien transmission. Most humans hadn't. Admiral, we're receiving a signal from outside the solar system. It's definitely alien in origin, using mathematical constants that match our first contact protocols. The message appears to be some kind of distress call. Chen felt her heart rate increase. After 200 years of isolation, why would aliens contact them now? Put it through the translation matrix and get me a full analysis. The message that appeared on the main screen made Chen's blood run cold. The universal translator had worked quickly, turning alien sounds into clear English text. She read about the peaceful Zephyrian colonies, their complete destruction, and the massive fleet of Vorthan warships moving toward their next target. 12 million dead, Morrison whispered. An entire peaceful civilization just gone. Chen studied the tactical data that came with the message. The Vorthan fleet consisted of over 200 heavy combat vessels, each one larger than anything currently in the United Earth Defense Force. The target system, Altair Prime, housed 4 billion civilians who had no military defenses. Get me a direct line to Earth Command, Chen ordered. Priority Alpha clearance. Within minutes, General Harrison appeared on the holographic display. His weathered face showed the confusion Chen felt. "Sarah, what's this about alien contact? I thought the quarantine was absolute." "It was, General, but we just received a distress call. Someone out there is committing genocide, and they're asking for our help." Chen transmitted the alien message to Earth Command. "Sir, according to this data, 4 billion innocent people are going to die in 8 days unless someone stops this Vorthan fleet." General Harrison was quiet for a long time as he reviewed the information. Like all senior military officers, he knew about the old projects. The weapon systems that had been sealed away when humanity chose to focus on peace and exploration instead of warfare. "Sarah, our current active fleet consists of 12 exploration vessels and 6 system patrol ships, good for scientific missions and asteroid mining operations. Not exactly what you'd call a combat force." "No, sir, but we have other options." Harrison nodded slowly. Both of them were thinking about the same thing. Deep in the classified military archives were the designs and locations of humanity's most dangerous creations, weapons so terrible that humanity itself had voted to ban their use after the last war ended global conflict on Earth. "The Ghost Fleet," Harrison said quietly. "Yes, sir. 30 ships, all in perfect condition, all in cold storage throughout the solar system. Crews are kept in cryogenic suspension, rotating every 10 years to maintain readiness. The Ghost Fleet had been humanity's answer to the possibility of alien invasion. When first contact revealed a galaxy full of advanced civilizations, military planners had prepared for the worst. They built warships that incorporated every lesson learned from centuries of human warfare. Ships designed by a species that had turned organized violence into an art form. When the Galactic Council quarantined humanity, the Ghost Fleet was supposed to be decommissioned. But military leadership convinced the civilian government to keep the ships in storage just in case. For 200 years they had waited in the cold darkness of space, maintained by automated systems and skeleton crews. "General, those people are going to die," Chen said. "The galaxy's peaceful fleets can't stop this. We're the only ones who can help." Harrison was quiet for another minute. He was thinking about political consequences, about breaking quarantine, about revealing humanity's military capabilities to a galaxy that already feared them, but he was also thinking about 4 billion innocent lives. "I'll need authorization from the World Council," he finally said. "But Sarah, start the awakening process. If we're going to do this, we'll need every hour we can get." The World Council emergency session was unlike anything in recent human history. Representatives from every nation on Earth gathered in virtual conference to discuss breaking 2 centuries of isolation. The debate was fierce but brief. The images from the destroyed Zephyrian worlds made the choice clear. President Martinez cast the deciding vote. "We didn't spend 200 years learning to be better people, just to stand by and watch genocide happen." Authorization granted. Across the solar system, ancient systems began powering up for the first time in decades. On Titan, the massive shipyard that had built the dreadnought Ragnarok received its activation signal. The ship was over 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to crack a moon. Its artificial intelligence systems began running through combat protocols that had been gathering digital dust for 50 years. In the asteroid belt, the carrier Pandora's Box released clouds of maintenance drones to prepare its fighter squadrons. Each fighter was controlled by an AI that had been programmed with every aerial combat technique in human history. They moved through space like schools of metallic sharks. Beautiful and deadly, near Jupiter's orbit, the Entropy's Edge began charging weapons systems that violated 3 different treaties on weapons of mass destruction. The ship's main cannon could tear holes in space itself, creating gravitational anomalies that would crush any vessel caught in their pull. Admiral Chen took command of the flagship Prometheus Unbound, a vessel whose AI systems contained tactical databases from every war humanity had ever fought. As she walked through corridors that had been empty for decades, she felt the weight of history on her shoulders. The crew members emerging from cryogenic suspension were all volunteers who had dedicated their lives to a duty they hoped would never be needed. They were the best of the best, trained not just in combat but in the psychology of warfare. They understood that sometimes peace could only be preserved through superior violence. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the fleet's xenobiologist, briefed Chen on what they knew about the Vorthan hegemony. "They're an old species, Admiral. They conquered most of their local galactic region about 800 years ago, then went quiet. Most people thought they'd become peaceful or gone extinct. Apparently not, Chen replied, studying the tactical displays. What are their combat capabilities? Unknown. Their ships are large and heavily armed, but they've been fighting peaceful civilizations with no military experience. We don't know how they'll respond to actual resistance, Chen nodded. It didn't matter. The Ghost Fleet had been designed to fight enemies with unknown capabilities. Human military doctrine was built on the assumption that any alien force might be superior in technology or numbers. The solution was to be more brutal, more creative, and more willing to do whatever it took to win. As the 30 ships of the Ghost Fleet formed up around Luna, something awakened in the collective consciousness of the human crews. It was the same primal fury that had driven their ancestors to develop weapons capable of ending civilizations. But now it was focused outward, toward those who would harm the innocent. The quantum drive systems engaged, tearing holes in space itself to allow faster-than-light travel. The Ghost Fleet disappeared from normal space, leaving behind only a simple message transmitted to the Galactic Council. Message received. We're coming. The transmission was sent in perfect galactic standard, proving that humanity had been monitoring galactic communications throughout their quarantine. It was signed simply, United Earth Defense Force, Ghost Fleet Command. For the first time in 2 centuries, humanity was returning to the galaxy. They were not coming as explorers or diplomats or traders. They were coming as the apex predators they had always been, awakened by the cries of the innocent and armed with 200 years of suppressed military innovation. The galaxy was about to remember why humans had been quarantined in the first place. The Galactic Council's long-range monitoring stations detected impossible readings as the Ghost Fleet moved through dark space toward the Altarian system. Energy signatures that should have torn any known vessel apart were holding steady. Velocities that violated basic physics were being maintained without apparent strain. Admiral Theiss stared at the sensor data with growing amazement and terror. These readings cannot be correct. No ship can generate that much power without destroying itself. Her science officer, a nervous Trilaxian named Zeph, triple-checked his instruments. Admiral, I've run full diagnostics on all our sensors. The readings are accurate. Whatever the humans have built, it operates on principles we don't understand. The Ghost Fleet was moving at velocities that made normal space travel look like walking. They were covering distances in hours that should have taken days. More disturbing was what the sensors revealed about the ships themselves. Each vessel was surrounded by energy fields that seemed to bend reality around them. Their hulls were made from materials that absorbed sensor scans like black holes swallowed light. On the flagship Prometheus Unbound, Admiral Chen reviewed the tactical situation as they approached the intercept point. The Vorthon fleet was still 6 hours away from Altair Prime, moving in a standard conquest formation. Intelligence suggested they would begin orbital bombardment immediately upon arrival, just as they had done to the Zephyrian colonies. Admiral, we have full power to all weapons systems, reported Commander Torres, the tactical officer. All 30 ships are reporting ready status. Chen nodded and opened a fleet-wide communication channel. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. In a few hours, we will engage a hostile force that has committed genocide against peaceful civilians. They are moving to commit the same crime against 4 billion more innocent people. We will not allow this to happen. She paused, looking at the tactical displays showing the enemy fleet. 200 vessels, each one a kilometer or more in length, designed specifically for destroying planetary populations. They had never faced real opposition. They were about to learn what happened when you threatened innocent people in front of humans. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. These are not soldiers defending their homes. These are exterminators who chose to murder peaceful civilizations. Show them what happens when they pick a fight with Earth. The Ghost Fleet had been designed by humans who understood that alien enemies might have superior technology, larger ships, or greater numbers. The solution was to be more dangerous, more creative, and more willing to do whatever was necessary to protect humanity and its allies. Each ship was a masterpiece of human military engineering. The dreadnought Ragnarok carried weapons that could shatter continents. Its main cannon fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, turning kinetic energy into devastation that could crack planetary crusts. Its secondary weapons included gravitational mine layers and reality distortion bombs that created temporary black holes. The carrier Pandora's Box held 3,000 fighter craft, each one controlled by AI systems that had been programmed with every aerial combat maneuver in human history. The AIs had spent decades in simulation, fighting millions of battles against theoretical alien opponents. They moved through space with predatory grace, like mechanical wolves hunting in perfect coordination. The entropy's edge carried humanity's most terrible creation, weapons that attacked the fundamental forces holding matter together. Its arsenal could unravel the molecular bonds of enemy ships, turning kilometer-long warships into clouds of disconnected atoms. The weapons had been banned by human treaty as too dangerous for use against other humans. Alien exterminators had no such protection. Dr. Warren monitored the alien communications as the Ghost Fleet approached the intercept point. Admiral, the Vorthon fleet is maintaining standard approach vectors toward Altair Prime. They show no indication that they're aware of our presence. Their sensors are probably designed for detecting civilian ships and planetary defenses, Chen replied. We're running full stealth systems. They won't see us until we want them to. The stealth technology was another human innovation born from centuries of warfare. The Ghost Fleet ships could become nearly invisible to most sensor systems, appearing as nothing more than cosmic background radiation until they chose to reveal themselves. It was a predator's advantage, allowing them to choose the time and place of engagement. As they entered the Altarian system, Chen felt the familiar calm that came before combat. She had trained for this moment her entire career, though she had hoped it would never come. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces showing the focused determination of professionals preparing to do a terrible but necessary job. All ships, battle stations, Chen announced. We drop stealth in 30 minutes. The Ghost Fleet moved into perfect attack formation. They had drilled this maneuver thousands of times in simulation, positioning themselves to create overlapping fields of fire that would prevent enemy escape. Each ship knew its role, its targets, and its backup assignments if other vessels were disabled. The Vorthon fleet, meanwhile, continued its approach toward Altair Prime with the confidence of conquerors who had never faced real opposition. Fleet Commander Krax reviewed the bombardment plans from his flagship's command center. The attack would begin with orbital strikes against major population centers, followed by systematic destruction of all infrastructure. Within days, another peaceful civilization would join the Zephyrians in extinction. Krax had commanded the destruction of 17 worlds during the hegemony's first wave of conquest 800 years ago. After the long sleep, he looked forward to returning to the work he knew best. The galaxy had grown soft during the centuries of peace. These new civilizations had forgotten the lessons of survival that only warfare could teach. His tactical officer interrupted his planning. Commander, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the outer system. Long-range sensors show some kind of distortion near the 7th planet. Krax barely looked up from his bombardment schedules. Probably some kind of natural phenomenon. The peaceful species never clean up their industrial waste properly. Continue approach to the primary target. The tactical officer hesitated. Sir, the readings are significant. They don't match any known natural phenomena in our databases. Then there's some kind of primitive defense system, Krax said dismissively. These peaceful species sometimes try to protect themselves with antique weapons. Ignore it and maintain course. It was exactly the kind of arrogant assumption that human military planners had expected from an enemy that had only fought helpless civilians. The Ghost Fleet continued its approach, invisible to Vorthon sensors, while the enemy fleet moved unknowingly toward its destruction. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display as the range closed. In 15 minutes, she would give the order to decloak. The Vorthon fleet would suddenly find itself facing weapons they couldn't understand, operated by warriors from a species that had turned violence into an art form. Admiral, Commander Torres reported, all ships confirm ready status. Weapons charged, target assignments locked, escape routes calculated. Chen nodded. The escape routes were standard protocol, though she doubted they would need them. Human war games had tested the Ghost Fleet against simulated enemies with superior numbers and technology. The outcome was always the same: total victory or total destruction with no middle ground. All ships prepare to engage, Chen announced. Remember, these are the ones who murdered 12 million peaceful Zephyrians. Justice delayed is justice denied. The Ghost Fleet dropped out of stealth at maximum weapons range, 30 ships appearing from nowhere like metallic gods of war. For the first time in 800 years, the Vorthon hegemony was about to face an enemy that knew how to fight back. The battle for the future of galactic civilization was about to begin. Fleet Commander Krax was studying orbital bombardment patterns when his tactical officer's voice cut through the bridge chatter with obvious panic. "Commander, 30 unknown vessels just appeared at maximum weapons range. They weren't there 5 seconds ago." Krax looked up from his displays with irritation. His fleet of 212 heavy warships had never encountered serious opposition. Most civilizations surrendered when they saw the size of the Vorthon fleet. Those that resisted were quickly overwhelmed by superior numbers and firepower. 30 ships against 200? Krax laughed. These Altarians are even more foolish than the Zephyrians. Perhaps they think their sacrifice will inspire others to resist us. He activated the fleet communication system to address his subordinates. "All ships, we have minor opposition at long range. Maintain course toward the primary target. Destroyer squadrons will deal with this annoyance while the main fleet continues bombardment preparations." But as sensor data flowed across his screens, Krax's confidence began to waver. The energy readings from the unknown vessels were beyond anything in the Vorthon databases. Each ship was generating power levels that should have been impossible for vessels of their size. "Commander," his science officer reported with a trembling voice, "the energy signatures don't match any known technology. These ships are operating on principles we don't understand." Krax studied the tactical display more carefully. The 30 ships had positioned themselves in perfect formation between his fleet and Altair Prime. Their arrangement was mathematically precise, creating overlapping fields of fire that would make escape difficult. This was not the desperate last stand of helpless civilians. This was professional military positioning. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the unknown fleet." "Put it through," Krax ordered. Perhaps these newcomers would surrender once they understood the odds they faced. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and emotionless, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "Vorthon Fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. You have committed genocide against the peaceful Zephyrian colonies. You are now approaching Altair Prime with the apparent intention of committing the same crime against 4 billion innocent civilians." Krax felt his blood chill at the mention of Earth. Every Vorthon military officer knew about the quarantined system and the dangerous species that lived there, but that quarantine had held for 2 centuries. How were humans here, and why were they interfering with Vorthon conquest? Admiral Chen continued her transmission. "By the authority of the Galactic Council and in defense of innocent life, you are ordered to surrender immediately. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is your only opportunity to avoid total destruction." The bridge of Krax's flagship fell silent. 200 years ago, the Vorthon hegemony had carefully avoided contact with the Sol system after reading galactic intelligence reports about human warfare capabilities. The quarantine had been as much for Vorthon safety as galactic protection. But now, facing only 30 ships against his massive fleet, Krax allowed arrogance to override caution. "Human Admiral, you are outnumbered 7 to 1. Your 30 vessels cannot stand against the might of the hegemony. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." The response came without hesitation. "Fleet Commander Krax, you have forfeited your right to exist. What you are about to witness is not a battle. It is an execution. All ships, weapons free, engage." The Ghost Fleet opened fire. What happened next would be recorded by every sensor in the system and transmitted throughout the galaxy as proof that humanity had returned to space with capabilities that defied comprehension. The human weapons didn't just penetrate Vorthon shields, they ignored them completely, striking hull armor as if the defensive systems didn't exist. The dreadnought Ragnarok's main cannon fired a projectile at 70% light speed. The kinetic round struck the Vorthon heavy cruiser Dominator amidships, transferring enough energy to vaporize the entire vessel in a flash of superheated plasma. The explosion was visible from Altair Prime, 40 million kilometers away. The carrier Pandora's Box released its fighter swarms in perfect coordination. 3,000 AI-controlled fighters moved through space like a mechanical hurricane, each one equipped with weapons that could penetrate capital ship armor. They didn't attack randomly but followed complex tactical patterns developed through millions of simulated battles. The Vorthon point defense systems, designed to stop missiles and small craft, proved useless against enemies that moved with impossible speed and coordination. Human fighters slipped through defensive fire like ghosts, delivering precision strikes against critical systems before vanishing into the darkness of space. The Entropy's Edge fired its reality distortion weapons at the Vorthan formation's center. Space itself seemed to twist as gravitational anomalies appeared among the enemy ships. 3 massive Vorthan battleships were crushed like tin cans as temporary black holes formed around them, their hulls imploding under forces that could bend light. Krax watched in horror as his fleet began to disintegrate. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were being destroyed faster than his tactical displays could update their status. The human weapons were unlike anything the Vorthan military had encountered. They attacked matter at the molecular level, disrupted gravitational fields, and somehow fired projectiles that arrived before the weapons that launched them. All ships, emergency scatter pattern, Krax ordered. Full retreat to hyperspace. But the human formation had been designed to prevent escape. Each Ghost Fleet vessel had positioned itself to cover multiple escape vectors. As Vorthan ships tried to flee, they found human interceptors waiting for them with weapons already locked on target. The destroyer Shadowhawk used quantum torpedoes that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Vorthan ships trying to escape to hyperspace found themselves under attack in normal space and subspace at the same time. The weapons followed fleeing vessels across dimensional barriers, making retreat impossible. On the bridge of the Prometheus Unbound, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The battle was proceeding exactly as the war games had predicted. Human weapons, designed by a species that had perfected warfare against its own kind, were proving devastatingly effective against aliens who had only fought peaceful civilizations. Admiral, the Vorthan flagship is attempting to open communications, Commander Torres reported. Put him through, Chen replied. Krax's voice came through the speakers, no longer arrogant but desperate. Admiral Chen, I request terms for surrender. My fleet yields to your superior tactics. Chen's response was delivered in the same cold tone she had used throughout the engagement. Commander Krax, you murdered 12 million peaceful Zephyrians. You came here to murder 4 billion more innocent civilians. There are no terms. There is no surrender. There is only justice. The Prometheus Unbound fired a full spread of antimatter torpedoes at the Vorthan flagship. The weapons struck simultaneously, turning the massive warship into an expanding sphere of pure energy. Fleet Commander Krax and his command staff vanished in an instant, joining the billions of innocent people they had killed in their campaigns of conquest. Across the battlefield, the remaining Vorthan vessels continued their futile attempts at escape or resistance. Human weapons continued their methodical destruction, each shot precisely calculated to disable or destroy enemy ships with minimal waste of ammunition. This was not passionate revenge but cold professional execution. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it ended, the Vorthan hegemony's conquest fleet existed only as expanding clouds of radioactive debris. Not a single human ship had taken significant damage. The Ghost Fleet reformed into perfect parade formation, their weapons powering down as they took defensive positions around Altair Prime. Admiral Chen opened a communication channel to the planet below. Altair Prime, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. The hostile fleet has been neutralized. You are safe. On Altair Prime, 4 billion people stared at their planetary displays in shocked silence. They had expected to die within hours. Instead, they had been saved by warriors from a world they had never heard of, using weapons they couldn't understand. The age of galactic peace through superior firepower had begun. The news of the Vorthan fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy, faster than any previous event in recorded history. Every spacefaring civilization's sensor networks had detected the impossible energy signatures from the Altarian system. Military analysts struggled to understand how 30 ships had completely destroyed a force 7 times their size in less than 18 minutes. On Galactic Council Station Prime, Admiral Theiss reviewed the sensor logs for the 15th time. The reading still made no sense. Human weapons had demonstrated capabilities that violated known physics. Their ships had moved and fought with coordination that suggested a level of military sophistication the galaxy had never imagined. Admiral, her aide reported nervously, we're receiving priority transmissions from over 40 member civilizations. They're all asking the same question. What do we do about the humans? Tis closed her large black eyes and considered the political earthquake that was reshaping galactic civilization. For 2 centuries, the quarantine had kept humanity isolated from the rest of the galaxy. Now they had demonstrated military capabilities that made every existing fleet obsolete overnight. Worse yet, intelligence reports suggested that the Ghost Fleet represented only a tiny fraction of humanity's actual military potential. Long-range sensors had detected massive energy signatures throughout the Sol system as other human installations came online. Whatever they had awakened to deal with the Vorthon threat, it was far larger than anyone had imagined. The political implications were staggering. How do you negotiate with a species that can destroy your entire civilization in less than 20 minutes? How do you establish diplomatic relations with warriors who had just casually eliminated the galaxy's most feared military force? The answer came 18 hours after the battle, when Admiral Chen transmitted a message to the Galactic Council that would reshape interstellar politics forever. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, Chen's transmission began. I am Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding the United Earth Defense Force Ghost Fleet. We received your distress signal requesting assistance against the Vorthon hegemony's genocide campaign. That threat has been permanently eliminated. The formal tone of the message reassured some council members. At least the humans were following diplomatic protocols rather than simply issuing demands or threats. Chen continued. The United Earth government wishes to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council and all peaceful member civilizations. However, recent events have made it clear that the galaxy requires protection from forces that prey upon innocent populations. Here it comes, this thought. The demands for tribute, the threats, the ultimatums that usually followed such overwhelming military victories. Instead, what came next surprised everyone. Therefore, Earth is announcing the formation of the Terran Protection Corps, a joint human-alien organization dedicated to safeguarding peaceful civilizations from aggressive conquest, genocide, and other crimes against sentient life. Membership is voluntary. Protection is universal. The message included detailed proposals for cooperative defense treaties, shared intelligence networks, and joint training programs. Rather than demanding submission, the humans were offering partnership. Rather than threatening conquest, they were proposing protection. But the most significant part of Chen's message came at the end. Any species that commits genocide, enslaves entire populations, or engages in the systematic destruction of peaceful civilizations will face the full military response of the Terran Protection Corps. This is not a threat. This is a promise. The age of galactic tyranny is over. The response from member civilizations was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. The Altarians, who had been saved from extinction, immediately requested full alliance status. Within days, over 30 civilizations had applied for Protection Corps membership. Not everyone was pleased with the new order. The hegemony's client states, species that had profited from Vorthon conquest found themselves facing very different circumstances. Several minor aggressive civilizations that had been planning their own expansion campaigns quietly canceled their military preparations. On Earth, President Martinez addressed the World Council about humanity's return to galactic prominence. For 2 centuries, we were told we were too dangerous for galactic civilization. Today, we proved that sometimes danger is exactly what civilization needs. The Ghost Fleet took permanent station at Altair Prime, establishing humanity's first extraterrestrial military base in 200 years. Admiral Chen used the orbital facilities to meet with representatives from dozens of species, all of them eager to understand their new protectors. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, now serving as the Protection Corps' first xenological advisor, found herself busier than she had ever imagined. Admiral, we have requests for mutual defense treaties from 47 different civilizations. 3 species want to establish permanent embassies on Earth, and the Zephyrian survivors want to dedicate their new colony world to human friendship. Chen smiled at that last item. The few thousand Zephyrians who had escaped the genocide had been the first to volunteer for Protection Corps support services. Their artistic talents were already creating monuments to the human intervention that had prevented further massacres. But the most significant change was happening in the deepest archives of human military planning. Projects that had been theoretical for centuries were now receiving unlimited funding and resources. If humanity was going to be the galaxy's guardian, they needed to be prepared for threats that hadn't even been imagined yet. The research stations around Jupiter began developing new weapon systems based on lessons learned from the Vorton engagement. The asteroid belt shipyard started construction on vessels that would make the Ghost Fleet look like patrol boats. Deep space monitoring stations pushed their sensor networks to the edges of known space. Watching for threats that might approach from the galactic rim, General Harrison, now promoted to head the new Galactic Defense Command, briefed President Martinez on the expanding military preparations. Madam President, intelligence suggests there may be other hostile forces beyond our current sensor range. We need to be ready for enemies that might make the Vorton hegemony look peaceful by comparison. Martinez nodded. Humanity had accepted the responsibility of protecting innocent life throughout the galaxy. That meant being prepared for whatever nightmares might be lurking in the darkness between stars. 6 months after the battle at Altair Prime, the first Protection Corps joint training exercises began. Human officers worked alongside alien allies, sharing tactical knowledge and combat techniques. The peaceful species of the galaxy were learning to defend themselves, while humans learned about technologies and perspectives they had never encountered. The galaxy was changing. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to piracy were reopened under Protection Corps' escort. Scientific expeditions ventured into dangerous regions, knowing that human warships would respond to any distress call. Peaceful civilizations began expanding again, confident that predators like the Vorton hegemony could no longer threaten them with impunity. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity. The species that had been quarantined as too dangerous for civilized contact were now seen as civilization's greatest defenders. The predatory instincts that had made other species fear humans were now focused outward, toward those who would harm the innocent. Admiral Chen, now promoted to command all Protection Corps forces, established her headquarters on a new station built at the intersection of major trade routes. From there, she could coordinate rapid response to threats throughout the civilized galaxy. The Ghost Fleet had expanded to over 100 ships, with more being built at shipyards throughout human space. The final word belonged to a Zephyrian survivor named Veltar, who had witnessed the destruction of his homeworld and the salvation of Altair Prime. In his memoir, published simultaneously in 47 languages, he wrote, "We sent a cry for help into the darkness expecting nothing but silence. What answered was not salvation wearing robes of peace and mercy. It was vengeance itself, armed with the fury of the just and the weapons of those who had learned to make war into art. The humans came not as conquerors but as guardians, not as tyrants but as protectors. They reminded the galaxy of a simple truth we had forgotten. Sometimes peace can only be preserved by those willing to wage war against its enemies." The galaxy was safe, guarded by the species it had once feared most. And in the depths of space, new threats began to stir, drawn by reports of the upstart species that had ended the Vorton hegemony's reign of terror. They would learn, as the Vortons had learned, that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons. It was their absolute refusal to let innocent people die, while they had the power to prevent it.